Growing up, whenever I would play football game, or a basketball game or anything, my father and my grandfather, their advice was always get mean out there. Get mean. That's what they wanted to see out of me, to play with a scowl, to play with tenacity, to bring it to the other team. I see so many young players today, so many young people today, they just don't have that meanness. Now, this wasn't being dirty. That's not what they meant. They meant most athletes are going to come out and they're going to play lackadaisical. It's just a game to them in every sense of the word. As I've talked about before, you want to remember it's just a game, but then you want to take it very, very seriously. So it's kind of a weird combination of taking things seriously and not taking the game too seriously. It's an art. It's an art to be able to find that place. Well, the aspect of taking the game seriously means when you're in the game, you play a little bit mean. But it's not just during the game, it's not just during performances. This meanness, if you will, has to be there kind of at all times. It's the chip on the shoulder. I think young people, especially, you've got to have a little bit of a chip on your shoulder, a little bit of meanness in your system. It's vital that you have this. A little bit of anger, something to prove. I've talked about needing a fuel list. Now, as always, this shouldn't be the only thing that motivates you. The number one motivation should be the love you have for the game, the love you have for just getting better at something, the love you have for life. Everything I talk about here relates to life in general. We can use sports as a vehicle to learn how to deal with life. But I've yet to meet any great person who didn't have that little chip on their shoulder. You want that chip on your shoulder. You want that meanness. When you're feeling mean, you'll notice your pain tolerance goes up. When you're feeling mean, you'll notice you can work longer hours. It sort of awakens something in you. It makes you tougher physically, psychologically. It helps you deal with failure. It helps you deal with obstacles. A mean person doesn't quit. A person with the chip on their shoulder doesn't quit either because they don't want to prove the people who are doubting them right. So you have to have a little bit of meanness. I can tell you some of the people in academia that I'm around have a chip on their shoulder because they feel like people are doubting them. I know tons of entrepreneurs. Their motivation, in large part, is to prove those wrong who didn't think their business or their product or their service would succeed. They have a chip on their shoulder. And just like MJ has a chip on his shoulder, just like Kobe has a chip on his shoulder, if they're unable to locate people who are doubting them, listen, that's usually not hard to do. There's always people who are going to doubt you. But if you can't find them, you make them up. You imagine them. You imagine somebody. You imagine the media. You imagine social media. You imagine your friends, your family. You imagine them doubting you. If there ain't a chip on your shoulder, go look for people who doubt you. Look within yourself. Maybe have a chip on your shoulder about your own inner voice. Prove your own self wrong. And if all that fails, just hallucinate, haters and doubters. That meanness, that chip on the shoulder is something every great person has. Now, when I say meanness, I don't mean you mistreat people. That's not what I mean. I mean kind of a meanness when you're in the competition. It's take no prisoners. It's all out all the time. That's what I mean by meanness. I'm not saying anything about how you should treat other people. You should be extremely nice and loving and kind to everybody you meet. But when it's time to play, when it's time to compete, it's a meanness. It's not dirty. It's just you're going all out and they better match your intensity. And if they don't, well, you're going to eat their lunch. So that attitude, that orientation towards the game is so vital. RIP Kobe.